Thank you very much. So, yeah, I'm already introduced, so I will not tell much, but actually the huge part of my experience is developing libraries and UI components, and so this is why I'm speaking today about the style guide-driven development. I'm currently working at SC5, based in Helsinki. This is a consultancy company. We are focused on front-end, preferably complex stuff, and we are bringing to our clients this style guide-driven development process. So, and actually, of course, we are writing HTML and JavaScript, but our main purpose is to fix their processes, to find what's disturbing, and probably provide tools to fix it and methods. So, as for style guides, we were very stressed with how the process of developing web pages goes. So here you see, I draw a canonical way of developing websites. So it's usually like a designer creating a mock-up, then it goes to HTML, CSS guy who writes HTML and CSS. It might be the same person who draws Photoshop files and who writes HTML, CSS, but they are still different roles in the process. And then after HTML, CSS dummy, probably equipped with JavaScript is ready, it can be implemented into a server and so go in production. So speaking about time, it must look like this. So there is some time dedicated for Photoshop files, then we're creating HTML, CSS, and then it goes to integration. But the problem is that it never happens this way, because usually it's like designers needed more time to create design because we probably underestimated or new requirements appeared. Then we cannot make markup right over because we probably are busy and so on, so we postpone it. But it really not a big deal because after we already started, again, new requirements appeared, designers redraw their Photoshop files, and we should throw away everything we coded and start with markup again. And it even doesn't go into production because there is no time. There's no place on the slide. Yeah, and the problem is that another problem is that it happens over and over again because in every iteration of our process we have this. And as a result, our visual system might be inconsistent because in different places we can implement something differently. And for the same reason, we can get inconsistent code. So it's very challengeable not to repeat yourself in code, especially if you're speaking about large websites or like set of websites which are sharing the same interface. And it might be very challenging to provide even small changes. For example, if we are asked to change all the buttons on the set of sites we have, which are sharing the same interface, it might be very tricky. However, it's just like one button. Okay, and because of all these challenges, the process is time-consuming. But the main disadvantage of it is that it doesn't matter how successful we are overcoming these challenges, because even fixed it one time, we are getting the same problems at the next iteration. So this is the most disturbing thing for me and for us in the company. And so people are starting to understand that it's better to consider websites not as a bunch of pages, but as complex systems built from components. And this is actually the strong movement in current front-end development. And because of this understanding, we are getting different modular solutions for writing our CSS. It doesn't matter what you have chosen for your website, like object-oriented CSS, Marks, BAM, Atomic Design. But they all are about modularizing your web interface, like decomposing the, let's say, one Photoshop file into interface components and then building these separated modules. With such an approach, we can get this thing, so that every component has its own development process. And it's like divide and rule. It's very easy to, well, not very easy, but it's much easier to estimate the time needed to implement. It's very easy to share among team members, and if something went wrongly, it's very more easy to fix the process. Okay. But this thing, the component-driven development, it's like easy to say, but not that easy to do, because this is a kind of cultural challenge. We are still considering websites as pages, and when getting set of Photoshop files from a designer, we are looking at pages. So there should be a way somehow to switch our mindsets and start thinking in components. And for that, there are different methodological tricks and tools to help. For example, living style guides have been spreaded. Firstly, style guides were using for designers to document their work, and they used to be like PDF files where they were represented colors and maybe simple elements and brand elements of a website. But now front-end developers took it into practice, so that we are now having living style guides, meaning that we have a documentary website where all the components are represented separately, and to render them, it's preferable to use the production CSS so that it would reflect the actual UI. And stepping further, with having living style guides, we may come to style guide-driven development, meaning that every fix to an existing component or every new component can be started from the style guide. So first you open the style guide, your living style guide, and start developing there, and then after it's ready, you implement it into the website. And it must be very easy because they are sharing the same CSS code. So it's almost zero amount of work. But again, the cultural challenge. Then getting new mock-up from a designer, how should I push myself not to fix it into the website and start from the style guide? This is the challenge each of us developers should overcome on their own. But again, we as developers, we can help this shift to happen, so that we can provide tools which do all the technical work, and so we are only for cultural challenge. So this is what we were thinking there at SC5. So we wanted our developers and our client developers to be this style guide, to have this style guide driven thinking. And so we felt that we are missing a tool for it, and we created our, we call it simply style guide generator by SC5. It's a link to its landing page, but actually it's an open source tool with a GitHub repository and so on. So, and I will showcase it today. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible, easy to start. This is why it's an NPM package. Then we wanted it to be applicable to any future project. So it supports all the CSS syntaxes we are using, like pure CSS, SASS and LESS. It keeps documentation in code, like JS doc, but for CSS in comments. And we decided to extend existing KSS document tool so that we are using it as a dependent package because we like the features. And it is gulp and grunt integrated out of box. This is very important because when it's just a separate command, people just run it once and, okay, nice. And it never goes into the process. But when it's integrated with gulp and grunt, it's a completely different story. So let me show you. Here, let's go here. Here there is a pattern library of one of our clients, so a library of components. So you can see oops. Okay. Here is the CSS. For example, let's go to moleculars. So this is that comments, so that every component has. Is it working? Okay. Every component has its title, description, markup needed for it to render, and then the corresponding CSS. Here it's SASS. So then I can run my gulp task. And it runs a local server, so that if I go to see it, so I have a local website where these components are represented. So if we go to the moleculars we were seeing, here they are. Every component is represented with its description. Then it's rendered, and this is actual CSS. It works. And let's go actually below. So here there are modifiers used for this component, and you can see that it's alive. And every component, like every example, also has its full screen view where there is nothing else but this component. And this is very useful for UI testing, like making screenshots and comparing screenshots between two versions. Then, okay, this is the markup needed. It's parsed from that comment documentation. And also there is a corresponding CSS, but this is like just for information. So you could see that with such a tool we have a living style guide, and it takes documentation from code, but we will also missed some features. For example, we were not very pleased with the fact that when changing markup, we needed to change it in both our documentation, in comments, and in production. So we provided the possibility to use Angular directives which do this. For example, if you go to code, and see here, there is a accordion, and here it's written which Angular directive to use to render this component. And on the website, it's it's working as HTML because the directive already worked. Then, okay, and besides, we wanted this generator, and the website it generates, we wanted it to be good development playground. And so we provided some extra features which are helping to our developers. For example, let's go back to the moleculars. Yeah. And then if we change something in code, let us, where we are. Let us change color. You can see that the website detects changes and renders itself, and so, well, this thing had been changed. Then there is another feature. We have a design tool button here, and if I press here, I can see the variables used to render this component and their values. And this is focused on the component I'm seeing now, but it's also possible to see all the variables, but it's not very useful because for large websites it's too much. But so we made this related variables feature so that we parse code and we know which variables belong to which piece of CSS and so to which component. And if I scroll, it's changed. Yeah, it is very important that we parse code and do not, with real parser, and do not use regular expression. But that's completely different story, but we got this wisdom of not using regular expressions for such tasks. So then this thing is editable. So for example, I can change this color to green, then save. And you can see that this thing became green. And moreover, if I go back, you could see that it changed the source. So some non-technical guys, they can like probably sit with you and change the paddings and so on, like then polishing web interface. Then we also have, if I click here, I have a list of all the components using these change variables, so I can see what was affected. So the color has been changed, then here it has been changed, and so on. So it's actually very useful to check the consistency of your web interface. And besides that, there is a search property here. For example, I can look for all the components which have inputs inside. Okay, here they are. So all the, if I changed input, I can see how the components which are using input are affected or not. Yeah. So this is how it's used in our client company. We have this pattern library shared among several projects, and the main achievement from it is that this is very easy to fix something in the components and then make the pull request. And so all the web services of this company contribute into the common pattern library. They say that it saves them 25% of working time. I have no idea how they calculate it, but okay. So then summing up, we have living overview, which pushes us to provide clean and well-structured code. It's very nice for manual testing, and it gives us UI kit for developing new pages. And it's good for UI unit testing as the components are separated. It's good for cross-team communication, so that all the team, they are at the same page, literally. So they are looking at the same website, they know what's implemented and how. And it's good because it's documentation first approach, but for UI. And so it's good for remote teams. And we are thinking that with such a tool, we are closer to our goal of style guide-driven mindset. So that we are hoping that in future, a developer get a new interface, they will think like, what are the modules needed to implement for this interface? That's it. These are the slides, if you missed them.